This is a presentation that we used at IATL this year. So if you went to IATL, which I'm not sure if any of you did, you may have heard some of it before, but please feel free to stop me at any time. And the reason that I've sort of thought to do this one is I actually think it covers a lot of the big points about the project and what we did and why we did all this digital literacy stuff. So I should introduce myself in case any of you don't know me. I'm Kathleen Smeaton, and I am the Associate Director of the Digital Scholars Hub at UQ. So, and there, I've put myself on the screen as well. Now I won't be able to look at the video and at the presentation at the same time, but that's what I look like. All right, and because it was Friday, I almost forgot my job title. So we're off to a flying start, everybody. So I guess what I'll talk to you about is the digital literacy framework that the library owns at UQ and the work that we did in creating the Digital Essentials module. So for IATL, what we really did was talk about how we sold digital literacy to academics, which I guess is something that we all have to do if we want to get digital literacy embedded in the curriculum. So if I can get this to work now, it would be handy. Sorry. So one of the reasons that we wanted to start this project, and one of the things that we were thinking about when we started thinking about digital literacy, is the myth of the digital native. So anyone that knows me knows that if you utter the words digital native in my presence, I sort of recoil in horror and break out in hives, because the digital native, I think, is a myth that's well and truly been busted. And there's no such thing. Just because you're born in a certain age actually doesn't determine your digital skills. It's about your socioeconomic status, etc., etc. I realise I'm preaching to the converted here, so I'll hop off my soapbox now and stop. But what we realised is that the term digital native is still being used in academic literature. It's still being used by universities. People are still telling academics that their students are actually going to know automatically how to do all these amazing things that they actually don't know how to do, because just because you're born at a certain time doesn't mean you have certain skills. It's biologically deterministic. You know, it's like saying just because I was born at a certain time, I can, I don't know, wear leg warmers really well or something like that. So what we realised is there was a big problem at UQ around the digital literacy of students, the assumptions that were being made, and therefore the experience that they were having. So we sort of thought, well, we need to do something. And the reason that we called this presentation What's Up, Doc, and the reason that that is the beginning of an email is, you know, hey Doc, what's up, is we got some really great stories from academics around what they thought students, different skill students could build. And one of them is around emailing. We collected some great stories from academics around emails they'd received from students, including ones that started "was up, bro," like WASSUP, and some others that were like "hey you," and my personal favourite, which was actually an email that started "what's up, doc," to a professor, because they thought, oh yeah, they're a doctor, haha, very funny. So we realised that we really need to do something around some digital literacy skills. So any report that you read around the future of work, you name it, no matter who wrote it, everyone tells us that digital literacy is an absolutely critical skill. Work, you know, future workplace is going to require digital literacy in whatever they want to call it. Sometimes it's digital literacy, sometimes it's digital capabilities, whatever it might be. We know that students are going to need it, and we know that the university therefore has a role in developing digital literacy. So in 2016, the UQ Library developed the Information and Digital Literacy Strategic Framework, and that work was actually led by Jill Hallam, who some of you may know. So this framework was created as a way of the library, I guess, owning this space. And the reason that it was tied to information literacy is information and digital literacy, I think, and obviously Jill thinks as well, seeing as this was her work, go hand in hand together. They're very hard to separate. So they created this framework around information and digital literacy to show that university, that the library, this is the library's role to help create these skills. This is what we do. And a framework is great, but I am going to bet that every one of you sitting in whatever institution you have has 77 million different frameworks. Everyone's got a framework for everything. Someone said to me, and I believe this is true, it's impossible for a bunch of librarians or educators to get in the same room and sit down without creating a framework. people love creating frameworks, and it's good to have a framework, but you can't just stop there. So the framework was really the basis, and what we didn't want to do when we started this was to create another framework. So we used the existing one, which is great. And we knew that we needed to create some resources around information and digital literacy, but the things that we knew is that academic support's vital. Even though these resources are going to be used to develop digital literacy of students, I don't know about the students at your institutions, but students at UQ don't just automatically Google the library for help for digital literacy or information literacy. That's not their first spot. That's not where they go. They're going to go somewhere else. So we knew that we needed academics to direct them to these resources. So it was kind of this odd thing of we're creating resources for students, but academics are going to sell them for us. So they're the ones that are actually going to get the students to use it. So therefore, the key in all of this is getting academics involved. So we needed them to obviously embed it and understand digital literacy. So our challenge was creating student-friendly resources that would be promoted by us, but largely the people that are going to drive them to our resources are academics. So first of all, I guess the most important thing I should say here is the reason that we were able to do this and the reason that we were able to get a lot of buy-in from academics is because UQ ran the JISC Digital Capability Survey for students in 2018. Nola might pick me up on that and tell me I'm wrong, but if I will leave that to her. To ask students how they use digital technologies in their learning, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they could have more support with. And so students overwhelmingly said, oh yeah, we love using digital technology, 65%. 70% said it's really important that we have these skills for our future careers. They've read all the future of work reports that we've all read too. But only 44 said their course prepares them for the digital workplace. And 40% of the students said, I don't have time to update my digital skills. And the other interesting thing is it's really like an unusual concept when you're studying to say, oh, do you think your course prepares you for the digital workplace? Do you have time to update it? When you don't actually really know what digital skills you're going to need when you get to the workplace. It's hard to pin it down when you've never been there. So this was really good. This survey really gave us something to hang the modules off and to be able to say to academics, hey, students need this. We're not just making them for the sake of it. We know students need these resources. So that was kind of the first piece of the puzzle. After we'd got those survey results, the first thing that we did is we held some focus groups with students to kind of dig a bit deeper into the results. We had 10,000 respondents to that JISC survey, or actually 9,983 or something like that, but I just go with 10,000. And we ran some focus groups with students to dig into that a bit and say, well, what do you mean about you want digital capabilities, or what do you want to do? And that's just who we had talking to us. What did they tell us? Well, from what they told us, there were three main themes: information seeking, concepts, and learning preferences. So what students told us, and again, you'll all be shocked, I hope nobody's going to faint when I tell them, that students Google or YouTube to find information. Again, they don't come to the library website. That's their quickest way to find things. It's just easier, it's faster. University websites are generally very confusing. There's stuff everywhere, so they Google it. And that was why we knew that just putting resources on the library website, well, we can put as many resources up there as we want. Who's going to look at them? Us, librarians. So that was the first thing students told us. The second thing they told us was don't ever use the words information and digital literacy, because we asked them what digital literacy meant, and they said it's old people that don't know how to use computers and phones. And like, what does it mean? Doesn't mean anything. Or people also said, oh, is that what I had to learn about in high school? Boring. So it was really interesting, because when we broke down the skills they actually needed to have, so we'd say to them, oh, do you want to do digital literacy? And they'd go, oh, I don't need to know how to use a phone. That's for like Nana. But they would say, I actually don't know how to use a Creative Commons image properly in my assignment. So we would class that as a digital literacy skill. They don't. So I think a lot of the time we use librarian speak or educator speak in some of our resources, and it's just not appealing. So we deliberately removed all that kind of talk, those kind of words, because they didn't like them. As a side note, Facebook has a digital literacy course. And I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg did the same focus group and thought, let's call it digital literacy and no one will look at it. So we can take your data. But that's another side note. And then the other thing that we found out is people had different learning preferences. People want to do things in their own time. Again, you all know this. Nobody wants to do things, 6 weeks out. You want to do it the night before or a week before when you need it. And you need to have good quality resources. I have a bit of a thing about another soapbox about videos. Everyone says, let's make a video, let's make a video, let's make a video. Sometimes videos, nobody's going to watch them. So if you're going to do anything, you have to do it well and you have to do it for a purpose. So we needed to have good resources. So we went and talked to students. We knew what they wanted. We knew the type of resources we were going to create. We followed user-centered design. We managed to, we involved students all the way through. We had 2 student partners help build our resources and we tested them with students. And then I might actually just show you the resources. So if I just bring up, sorry, I'll have to bring up Digital Essentials now. Can you see the internet screen there, or is it just sharing the PowerPoint?
It's just the PowerPoint.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me just share my actual screen. Okay. So what we ended up creating were these tools called Digital Essentials, and that name was a name students came up with. And what they are is, what we did was we basically looked at what students needed and we sort of went, well, what do students need? We talked to them, we figured out what they needed. We created a whole series of modules for students that could be embedded online. So every module covers a different skill. So if I look at something, and I'll just show you a couple of quick ones. So if you look at something like communicate and collaborate online, this covers big concepts like communicating and collaborating online. How do I do it nicely? What's effective online communication? How do I talk to people nicely? Online etiquette. Then we've also tried to put in some really pertinent information, such as, how to collaborate. Well, firstly, we put in some information about how to write an email in a professional tone, but then we also put in some more information about, what are some tools. So if you're doing a group assignment, what tool could you use, what Slack's good for, what Facebook's good for, those types of things. Some of the other modules like finding and using media is really specific. If you had an academic that had an assignment where students needed to use Creative Commons, they could say to them, you have to do this module before you actually submit your assignment, because this goes through the history, well, not the history, it goes through why copyright's important. It goes through the moral rights of creators, all those types of things. So the students can get a bit of background, or if they really don't care and they just need to get a Creative Commons image, you just click on section 4 and it tells you exactly how to do it. So it's kind of got the background and the practical. We did that deliberately because some people, if you just need to know what you need to know, you don't want to go through the whole module. So even though we've designed them as quite modular and stepping through, you don't have to step through them, because nobody wants to have to go through 6 pages to get to the bit they found useful last time. So there's those types of things that you could be embedded through assignments. Then something like Internet Essentials, we created this and we were thinking, I wonder how academics are going to use it. And this has actually been added to like reading lists and things like that. Because if you look at this in Internet Essentials, it sort of talks about what is the internet, why is Australia's internet so slow. That's something that I just, I was like, oh great, now I know why it's so slow. The web and web browsers, what is the web, dark web, all those types of things, how search works. This is the popularity of browsers. What are pop-ups, what are cookies? But then we cover things like, obviously the URLs and domains, we're all over that, but we cover things like net neutrality and who owns the internet. And so some academics have said to us it's useful to direct their students to these resources so that when they come into the lecture, they at least know that they've read a little bit of something, they've looked at this module quickly, and so when the concept of net neutrality or the dark web comes up, at least they have some kind of idea of what they're talking about. So these are what we designed, and I won't go through any more because you can all feel free to go and have a look at them. So I'll just come back to the PowerPoint. And they're all Creative Commons. So if you actually want to use them, do whatever you want with them. We are very happy for that to happen. So the academic feedback, well, it's been quite good. It's been really good so far, because the way that we spoke to people about it, and the reason people are using them is if you're teaching a course, it's jam-packed with content. You have to cram a whole lot of content into students in 12 weeks, and you don't have time to go into some of these things. So I did talk to some law students, and they told me this great story where at the end of one of the lectures, the lecturer goes, "Rightio, everyone use a CC image when you do your presentation," and walked out. And they were all like, "What's a CC image? Is that like chips? Like, what do we do? What's CC mean?" Because they didn't know. So the lecturer then has to devote half an hour of the next lecture to Creative Commons images, how to use them. He doesn't have time. He doesn't actually want to do that. So that was the benefit to academics. They were like, "Oh my God, this is going to be so much quicker." And we've got a module called UQ Systems, and tutors told us they loved that, because they said in the first tutorial, you've got 45 minutes, and the first half an hour is spent on saying to people, no, hang on, your email, you go into your email that way. No, Blackboard, and then they've got 15 minutes to cover 3 big concepts. So it's kind of, for them, it's a time saver. So that's how we really sold it. We were like, yeah, it'll make things quicker, and it has. Oh, sorry. So the academic feedback so far has been really, really good. They've loved it. They're all sort of like, "This is great. We think it's wonderful. Thank you so much." I'll just do a couple of last things. The reason that what we did when we created them all is we mapped them all to the JISC elements of digital literacy. So you can see they're all mapped there. The reason we did that is exactly because we didn't want to create our own framework of what digital and information literacy looked like, because we had 6 months to do this project, and we could have actually spent 6 months coming up with a digital literacy framework, and we absolutely did not want to do that. We had one, and we had the JISC one, so we went with that. Or, as I said, all the modules are mapped to them. The academics like them. We've had a steady increase in usage. So here's kind of what's been happening. You can see some are more popular than others, which is, sort of fair enough. And sorry, what I should show you is, so you can see that like different ones have different spikes at different times. So UQ Systems is super popular in O week, and so study success types of assignments. Whereas in March, Information Essentials is really popular. Communicating, collaborating online, writing and citing and submitting is much more popular. So it kind of, what we've noticed is it really spikes. So in April, no one's looking at UQ Systems because who cares? You know how to use them now. What you want to know about is how to write, cite and submit. And these statistics are currently going up, and they're just doing some really interesting things at the moment in the courses they're being embedded in. We can see spikes based on assessment. And then we also just get some weird spikes where we know that a lecturer must have set it as a reading list or must have set it as a something to do in a big first year course. So it's really interesting. Yeah, and this is sort of what academics have said to us. They're useful. Some people have said, can we make them compulsory? Everyone should do it in first year. And we've had a lot of people go, "Oh, can you just make me one on blah?" And we have. So confidentiality and images is an interesting one for that. So health came to us and said some health students might be taking photos when they're on placements of patients or whatever it might be, and they weren't sharing them so much on social media, but putting them in their e-portfolio, which most university students have. However, once your e-portfolio is online, you're really making those images public, because if you share it with an employer, they might be able to identify someone. So there was all these things about, well, what images can they use? And so health came to us with this module. And then as we looked at it a little more, we realised, oh, this is actually important for education students as well and teachers. And then we thought a little bit harder and went, oh, actually, if you're doing a placement in an advertising agency and you take a selfie and the computer or the wall behind you's got commercial in confidence information, then it's actually really important for anyone. So a lot of people, a lot of different faculties have come to us and said, I need one specifically for my students because my students are the only ones with this problem. But when you dig a bit deeper, it's actually more of a university-wide thing. So the next steps is we're going to keep on going. hopefully embed them in some more courses. And Nola and I are involved in a teaching and innovation grant to look at if there's a need for discipline-specific resources and what we could keep on doing. And that's sort of the end. And I should credit Marianne and Thomas, who also helped with this presentation and the paper we presented to IARDL. So I've probably talked enough. Does anyone have any questions they wanted to ask or anything they wanted to say?
Kathleen, it's Kelly here from ACU. I really love the modules you've created. One thing I especially like are the quizzes as well for those students who think they might already know the topic, so that and you often don't know what you don't know, for them to do the quiz and see whether or not they need to go through the content as well. I think it's great.
Oh, thank you. And I should have probably mentioned the quizzes, because the reason we designed those is if academics want students to do a particular module, either some academics have used it as in your next assessment is a presentation, and when you upload your slide to Blackboard, you must also upload your certificate to say you've completed that module, so I've known you've done it. So some academics have used those quizzes as part of assessment, and some people have used them as a bit of you've done something wrong, go and look at this module, show me that the certificate so that I know you've completed it. So yeah, the quizzes were a big feature that I forgot, sorry, Friday.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. That was quite interesting, and thanks for sharing all of that. I have a question in that you mentioned that you had about 6 months to do the project. Can you give us a sense of how big the project team was? And I'm also interested to know to what extent it included academics perhaps, or people from outside the library.
Yes, so the way that the project worked is there were 7 of us, and I was the project manager, project leader, so there was myself and 6 library staff members, and staff from all over the library were put together in 2 rooms, and we just months to create them. But what we did is, in addition to the 6 library staff members, or 7, including myself, we got 2 student partners in to work with us, and we were headed up by a steering committee. So the steering committee was consisted of somebody from Information Technology Services, somebody from our Institute of Teaching and Learning Innovation who was also an academic. We had an academic from the Humanities and Social Sciences. We had the Director of Employability. So that's how we sort of got their feedback in. And what we did with every module is, as well as testing it with students, so for the, there's a module there called Accessibility and Study Hacks. And what we would do with that is any module that had specialist content in it that we didn't know about, we would test with the relevant people. So for accessibility, the disability advisors at UQ looked over that module for us and cast an expert eye on it. For the employability one, employability advisors did the same. For any of the content, so the HAS academic, Dan Angus, who I think is at QUT now, he and a couple of other academics looked over the content in Internet Essentials, because they're experts in that area. That's one of their areas of research. So we were really mindful to say to content experts, hey, can you look at this and make sure we are saying the right thing and we haven't made any mistakes. So that was sort of how we engaged them.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks so much.
That's all right.
Kathleen, I've got a question. What are you doing to keep it current and to update the content?
Yes, we did, when we built them, we built in that we would continually check them. So basically, someone in my team goes through and checks everything about once a month and updates it, because we really wanted to keep them current. And we've actually got a student who works with us now who is looking at them as well. so in the social media one, I can't remember who the example is, but we've got an example of someone tweeting something that got them sacked. I can't remember who it is. Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump hasn't been sacked, but somebody. So what we wanted to do was make sure that we kept that current, because, you know, someone in a month is going to tweet something dumb and get sacked. So we wanted to make sure that the content was always up to date, current with what's happening in the world. So we just had to build that in. And so we knew when we were building them that they were actually going to have to be handed over to a team. So we had to sort of do a map and a plan of how often they'd get checked. And we've got sort of like a systematic, boring Excel spreadsheet that sort of plans out which month, which module's getting checked in.
Do we have any other questions?
I've just got one quick one, Kathleen. Thanks. That's a great website, great modules. I can see lots of use for it here, and the fact that academics are embedding it into my readings and so on is excellent. I'm just wondering if there's been any overlap with the fairly recent call. I've got the digital dexterity community of practice. We've just had one of our staff at SCU sort of nominated as a digital dexterity champion, and I think it's about sharing this sort of information. I'm just wondering if there's been any overlap with this project and that call group.
Yes, well, I'm actually a member of that call group as well, so we will absolutely share these. I think what actually happened when we took these out to academics, and what I think the call digital dexterity group will be really good at, is building librarian skills in digital capabilities. So it was interesting because whenever we showed these to academics, people would either say, oh my God, I need to do these myself because I had no idea, or they'd go, oh, my colleague, Joe, needs to do these because I tell you what, they don't know how to do this. So I think we've sort of moved on from these a little bit, and the next project we're doing is we're about to launch a staff digital capability survey, where we're going to look at, and we did one just for the library, but we're going to look at one for UQ-wide staff digital capabilities to see what the needs are of training needs are for UQ staff, and we're going to develop some more sort of staff-facing resources. So I think that will tie in really nicely to the digital dexterity champions. But we're not doing that alone, and I should say we also had learning designers look over this content as well, and I think one of the reasons why we're getting so much buy-in is because learning designers looked at it, so now they promote it because they feel like they've had a bit of a look at it, they know it's good quality, they'll embed it in courses. So as well as librarians embedding it in courses, learning designers will, employability advisors might mention it to people. So I think that kind of cross-unit collaboration really was the strength of the project and getting them out there.
Thank you. Any last questions? No? Thank you, Kathleen. That was really, really interesting, and I'm sure everyone is getting all excited, and we're all terribly excited that you made it Creative Commons so we can all use it again.
Yes, absolutely. And I've met someone from Brazil yesterday, and they're going to translate it into Portuguese. So,
oh, you're going to be famous.
Well, I don't know about that, but please feel free to do whatever you like with them. And if anyone's got any questions, just drop me an email.
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's very kind.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. That was wonderful. We really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.